Welcome back. So I have a question for you, dear listener. Do you have fear of prospecting? We know you do. It's time to hang up on that excuse. So what we're going to be doing on today's show is we're going to be going through how many points, Julie Harris?
Well, let me look ahead. I don't know. I think it's 10.
10 points and how you can get over the fear of prospecting. Now, the word prospecting in itself causes fear. So if you hear us, I think exchanging the word prospecting with proactive lead generation, that is Julie and I's attempt to get past your fear mechanism with your fight or flight reaction being that most of you will,
Yes.
flight when you hear the word prospecting. So prospecting is proactive lead generation. That's having conversations with decision-making adults about buying or selling real estate. So with that in mind,
All right. So, fear of prospecting, time for you to hang up on that excuse. On today's podcast, as Tim said, we're going to tackle one of the biggest challenges for real estate agents. That is overcoming the fear of prospecting and initiating conversations with people, whether that's acquaintances or complete strangers. I find that coaching clients have differing outlooks on that. Some of them, every now and then, I think about 1 in 20, they'd rather talk to somebody they don't know. Most people are more comfortable talking with who they do know. So whichever category you're in, these points will apply to you. We're going to provide practical tips and mindset strategies to help you become fearless and confident in all of your real estate transactions, interactions, and conversations.
now, obviously, these are notes you're absolutely going to want to have, and maybe it's just for yourself, your team, your brokerage, or you want to use these for social. All of the above means that you need to be subscribing, if you've not yet done so, to our exclusive listeners newsletter, which is called harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is the only place where all of our notes live. So if you want the notes from today's, today's podcast, as well as 5,000 past podcasts, just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and just drop in your email address and then hop over to your own email, confirm that you want the subscription, and then you'll start getting the newsletter every single day. That is the place to get all of our insider tips on real estate, especially in this really quickly changing market. So go to harrisrealestatedaily.com right now and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, doesn't cost you anything, completely pain-free, and you'll feel amazing being an insider as soon as you subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com. All right, Julie, let's go to point number 1. And point number 1 is understanding that fear is normal.
It is. You are not alone on this. Recognize that it is normal to feel fear around prospecting, especially when approaching new people. The key is to reframe that fear as a sign of growth rather than a barrier. Susan Jeffers is an author I use personally in coaching from time to time because she wrote the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. In it, she emphasizes that, quote, pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. Sounded a little bit like prospecting and avoiding it. And she also said that every time you take a step into the unknown, you experience fear. There is no point in saying, when I'm no longer afraid, then I'll do it, because you'll be waiting a very long time.
In the real estate industry, the fear fear of prospecting manifests itself in a lot of ways. So I want you to ask yourself if you've ever said any of these things or heard any of these things. Well, that's just old school. Prospecting is old school. Or have you heard everybody's doing it, and the sellers are just going to get super mad at you when you call because they've already received 1,000 phone calls? Or have you ever heard it? Well, you can never get the phone numbers. Have you ever heard that? Well, if you want to, nobody wants to be prospected. All the sellers, if you want to communicate with them, just go after them on social or do a direct mail campaign. All these types of comments are made by people that have never moved past their fear of actually picking up the phone and having direct, meaningful conversations with, in this case, sellers about, listing their homes. Every time you hear something like that from anybody, your next natural thought should be that person has never been a prospector or has never taken the time to learn how to be a really good prospector. And that's the reason they're saying the crap that they're saying. Because the reality of it is every salesperson, and that is what you are, dear listener, on planet Earth, no matter what they're selling, if they do not master the art and the science of having proactive lead generation conversations, see how I just did that?
Snuck that one in.
I snuck that one in, right? They're never going to be successful. It doesn't matter if you're selling jets. It doesn't matter if you're selling, camels in Camelville. The bottom line is you have to learn how to have meaningful conversations, and you can't be hiding behind a keyboard. And if you want to just look at it from a more practical stance, every single human that has a real estate license, none of them want to prospect. None of them want to prospect, and so none of them prospect. They all do the more passive stuff. That means the passive stuff is oversaturated. For every one agent that learns how to be a really good over-the-phone prospector, there's 1,000 that are struggling to try to generate online leads. So an idea might be do what other people aren't doing and you'll experience things they never will. Point number 2.
Yes, exactly. Have real conversations, not just digital ones. Okay. So number 2, shift the focus from yourself to service. Stop worrying about how you're being perceived and focus on how you can serve others. When you lead with value, the pressure of selling diminishes and conversations flow naturally. You sell real estate for a living. Find people who need your help doing that. I like to simplify it that way because that's really what's going on. And you talked about agents who are paying for leads. Remember that when you do that, that lead is not exclusively yours. But when you pick up the phone and you talk voice to voice to, say, a for sale by owner, an expired, a probate lead, even people in new construction, builders, that is your lead because you're the only one talking voice to voice.
So the shift from yourself, shift from basically thinking about, like, it's a psychological hack is really what this is. So I'll give you an example. I don't remember his name. I had a coaching client, and this was years ago, who was really, really good at role playing. I'd role play with him on his coaching calls. And he was really good at the script, really good at the objection handler, really good, fast on his feet. And then one of the coaching, so I would send him off, and at the end of every coaching call, he'd have a specific goal of how many appointments he was going to set, how many contacts he was going to make. He really wanted to become his market's best prospector. Okay, but he would come back to the call the following week, and his ratios did not reflect the skill set I knew that he had. And so I asked him to start recording his coaching call or his prospecting calls. And let me tell you, his prospecting calls were a dumpster fire. They were nothing like the actual role plays I was doing with him. And so when he would pick up the phone and he would call a stranger, his head, it obviously caused him to have complete brain fart to the point where he didn't know what to say or how to say it. He sounded completely different. He didn't even, his name was Jeff.
I read your mind.
Yep.
Pennsylvania, I think.
Right, exactly. He didn't even remember the script. He sounded like an amateur. You guys get my point here? So I had him listen to his recordings of him prospecting with me on the following coaching call, and he was mortified because he finally was listening for the first time what he actually sounded like. So I want you to put all those pieces together. He didn't even know how bad he was when he was talking to prospects. And his only real positive reinforcement was, well, I'm on the call with Coach Tim, and he says I'm good, or have the potential to be good.
When he was good with you.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, he was one of my best ones, actually. Mm-hmm. And so here's what the real epiphany was for him. His mindset when he was picking up the phone was 100% fear. He was fearful. His head would just fill with nothing other than, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to say? What if I'm not prepared for this? What if? And his head would fill with so much fear that it would cause him to almost become a different, be transcendental in a negative way, right? He'd become a different person. And then we worked on that, and there's no way really to help somebody be confident, move past that, other than them moving past it through the efforts that it's required. That's the whole thing about jumping in the deep end. You're going to learn to swim or you're going to die. And he wasn't going to die. He was going to learn to swim. So I had him write this down on a piece of paper and put it in front of his, where he could see it when he was on the phone. I am here to be of service to you. So that's what it was. I am here to be of service to you. I am here to be of service to you. And that was one of the reasons that Julie and I coined the mantra, or I think coined one of our many sayings of, the highest and truest purpose of people on this planet is to be of service to other people. That came partially from that coaching call because I realized what an incredible impression that had on him. He then, within like maybe 2 weeks, started setting appointments like a crazy person. Like he'd set a listing appointment every single day. So he'd come back to we were having weekly coaching calls, and he'd come back to our coaching call and he would have set 4 or 5 listing appointments, right? And this is from a guy who is setting no listing appointments. And then we would always review like, okay, what's the big difference now? He said when he is prospecting, he's looking at, I am here to be of service to you. And he's saying that to himself. Before he picks up the phone, I am here to be of service to you. If during the call, he's looking at this, at the words in front of him, I am here to be of service to you. He unplugged from his ego. He got into a point of, obviously a higher mental, emotional, and even spiritual state of being of service to other people. And that caused him to be able to think clearly and maintain his emotional state to the point where he actually started setting appointments. Now, when he started setting appointments, his fear went from like a level 11 down to like a level 2 or 3. He still had it, and you always will, no matter how good you get at this. But he didn't allow it to basically make it didn't control his behavior. You guys getting the difference here? So the highest and truest purpose of all humans on the planet Earth are to be of service to other people. That's where we're going to find our greatest levels of fulfillment. And that comes from taking care of your children. That comes from making contributions in your community. And it also comes from when you're picking up the phone, remembering the person that's on the other end of the phone, no matter how much, how they behave, either great or not so great, they are needing service. They're listing, in the case of expired or an unrepresented owner like a FSBO, they are in a state of absolutely needing to sell that property, and you're here to be of service to them. You know you're the best to be of service to them. You just have to convey that to them. I mean, that's all it was. That's the bridge that he had to cross.
It was a breakthrough, really.
It was a breakthrough, absolutely.
Yes.
And
he's grown into being one of the most successful agents out there, too.
In his market.
Yeah, in his
definitely.
market. So, yeah, I would say that's a breakthrough. So I hope listeners are paying attention, because that one thing, putting your mindset into a state of being of service and thinking about the other person more than you're thinking about how you're feeling, is a huge breakthrough. I hope you guys are picking that up.
And by the way, Julie and I are both looking for a small cadre of willing participants to be private coaching clients. And, if you're thinking about applying for the I'm trying to be funny, but I can't think of it. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, if you think you're ready for the next level in your real estate career, and you think you can, work at the highest level, and you'd like to talk with Julie and I about being your personal coaches, I'm looking for 3 clients personally, and that's it. And Julie's probably looking for 4. That's the extent of what we're looking for.
But only if you're serious.
But only if you're serious. And we're going to be very, very picky. And just being honest with you, for every 10 people that have asked to be in our personal schedules, there's probably only 1 that is going to be somebody that, are going to be given the opportunity, because of the fact that a lot of you are going to be better off in Premier Coaching than you're going to be in our personal schedules.
Which is fine.
Which is great. Yeah. I mean, Premier Coaching is awesome. It's probably one of our best products ever. But if you're really wanting to have, essentially what many people would, Inman News said Julie and I are one of the best coaches in the nation, the whole thing. So if you're looking for really what many people would argue are the best coaches in the nation, then I will suggest you text me directly at 512-758-0206. Text me with your information. Tell me a little bit about your real estate career. We're expensive and we're very picky. And so what's going to happen is, after I get the text, assuming we think, just based on what you said, it's a good fit, then you're going to talk to one of us, and then you're going to decide if you want to be with either Julie or myself, and we're going to decide, frankly, if we want you in our schedules as well. So this is just for the very, very top tier of you out there who are looking to have, somebody at our level be your personal coach. So 512-758-0206. If you call, I'll never answer, but if you text, I'll always reply. Julie, point number 3, scripts are your best friend, but let's change the word script. It's a
conversation outline.
That's right. So some of you will immediately say, Julie's point number 3 was, scripts are your best friend. Oh, I don't read scripts. They feel fake. You guys hearing this from some of your real estate cohorts? Those are also people who are not doing proactive lead generation and never have, because in their mind, scripts are evil. So replace the word scripts with a conversation outline.
So using those proven conversation outlines can help eliminate the fear of not knowing what to say. A lot of you guys don't do it because you're afraid of getting stuck. So those conversation outlines provide structure, allowing you to focus on the connection rather than scrambling for words. They're simply conversation outlines that are made up of questions which lead you to discover how to serve the person you're speaking to. Remember our previous point, how can you be of service? Sometimes the person you're talking to needs help, and sometimes they don't. It is that simple. All right, point number 4, embrace rejection, or I would say what you perceive as rejection, as part of the process. Understand that rejection is inevitable and it is part of the process, but don't fear it. Instead, see it as a step forward to finding the right clients. It's not no forever. If somebody says, no, I don't need your help, first of all, they're not rejecting you. They just don't need your help. And it's not no just for now. It takes a certain number of no's to get to the yes. And if you're not speaking with enough people, you're never going to discover those yeses.
So let me pause there. So this is a really interesting point. And this is, again, something that came from doing hundreds of thousands of coaching calls. When you, like, say, for example, you're listening to this podcast and you're listening while you're working out or whatever, and you're trying to decide whether you actually want to, take it seriously and pick up the phone and call an expired or whatever. But you're deciding, you're actually feeling internal stress. You're actually feeling anxiety from all of it. And that's your internal mechanism, the fight or flight thing that's trying to be triggered. The same as, literally, it's the same mechanism inside your body, the physiological response you have been designed to have in, if you were to be in a situation where you had to run or fight, right? So that's the same mechanism. Psychological fear and actual physical fear trigger the same fear mechanisms inside of you. So that's the reason it feels so real, because your body's reacting as if there's some pterodactyl that's about to, come and pluck your head
that
off.
has stayed within you.
Right. That's stayed in with you. It's a physiological imperative for us to have fight or flight. So let's just, that kind of, I think, encapsulates point number 1 as well. But with regards to point number 4. So that's what rejection feels like to a lot of us. It feels like it's fight or flight. And so what you do, now here's where this is kind of the advanced mental, judo here. So Jiu-jitsu. Thank you. So listen to what I'm about to say. When you drive past a for sale by owner today, and it's a great listing, great house, great neighborhood, you happen to know why the seller's selling and they're moving up to another house, but you decide not to contact that person because of the fact that you don't want to feel rejected. Let's just cut through all the Mickey Mouse. It really is the essence of it. You don't want to feel rejected. Aren't you, in essence, manifesting rejection? When you decide not to ask a question that could result in no, when you just decide to avoid asking the question, aren't you essentially just accepting the no right away?
You're guaranteeing the no.
Exactly. Yeah. So if your fear is being rejected, and that's the reason you're not being a proactive lead generator, aren't you locking in the rejection? Aren't you actually manifesting it or making it real by the very fact that you won't do it in the first place? Isn't that interesting? So whatever your mind is trying to avoid the most is where your growth needs to be. That's an old saying. And it is absolutely 100% true. So if you make a list of all the things in your real estate business that you don't want to do, and generally speaking, proactive lead generation or prospecting is usually in people's top 3.
For sure.
Well, then I want you to ask yourself, after you've made the list of what you absolutely won't do in your real estate business, then go back and ask yourself, well, why is it that I don't want to do these things? What's the actual reason why? And it's almost always ego-based fear. That's almost always what it is. And then ask yourself the third question, okay, so if I were to do these things and I were to get good at it, what difference would that make in my life? And you'll find that the things that you're trying to avoid doing the most are the very things that are going to have the biggest long-term benefit in your business and your personal life. Not just in the sake of being able to help more people and make more money, but the fact that you got past your fear will change your life forever. So please keep that in mind. Let's move to point number 5. Julie Harris.
Yes, well put. Number 5, start with people you know. Now, some of you are already doing a great job calling your FSBOs and expireds, and you're not weird about it. This is for those of you who need to maybe break the ice a little bit. Start with people you know. That's okay. Begin your prospecting with familiar faces, reaching out to your sphere of influence, your database, past clients. That's less intimidating and a great way to build confidence before tackling cold leads. A lot of my coaching clients will call 3 past clients before they'll call some of the more challenging ones. Leverage your sphere. They already know, love, and trust you. They're going to be happy to get your call. And on this podcast, we have talked many, many times about how specifically to speak with your sphere using your Ford script, all of those types of things. So it's okay to start with the people you know.
But that is a contact for sure, but it's not necessarily, like, for example, if you're looking to take a listing and make money, which, should be what you're looking to do, if you call a bunch of centers, this is funny. So Julie and I are sitting in our cabin last week, and I get a cold call from somebody on my cell phone, and it was somebody from our EXP Realty revenue share group.
Yeah.
He was in LA. He's listening, I'm sure. And he was cold calling this big list that he had, and he didn't realize who he was calling.
I know, it was great.
And I'm not like saying, oh, he didn't
Don't
realize.
you know who I am?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that.
No.
But so he started using a script. It wasn't ours. It was a circle prospecting script. And I guess his data was all messed up because he thought I lived in this community. He was letting me know about property values, which in itself is fine. And then I stopped him, and then I started asking him some questions. He was very nice and respectful. He wasn't put off at all. And then I said, so you're calling this list, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, so the name on your list the person that you're calling right now, what's that name? And he said, Tim Harris. And then he realized who he was calling. And so I gave him as much of a little free coaching call on why he should be calling expireds. Because here's what this guy was willing to do: pick up the damn phone and do the work.
Yep.
But what he was doing is he was making the calls to the least motivated people. Those are the people that do not have their hands up in the air right now and looking to sell their home. So if you prioritize around the people that already are actively trying to sell their homes, this should be obvious. That does require more skill It will require, you having a little bit more of a tolerance for people occasionally pushing back a little bit, but you're going to get more results. And so what I told him to do, what I suggested that he does, and hopefully he does, is he actually picks up the phone and he actually starts calling the folks that are already in the market to sell their homes and stop not wasting, but I'll say close to wasting time on cold calling people that have no interest in really buying or selling real estate.
Well, now this is a really important point because so many agents look at, quote, cold calling all as the same exact thing. They don't realize what you just said. And I agree with you. The circle prospecting is just basically busy work, calling people that you have no reason to believe they're ever going to transact. Some of them might not even be the homeowner. It could be a tenant.
It's like a PSA, public service announcement. It's, work theater.
Exactly. Okay. So, to me, that's cold calling, right? So versus when you call 100 circle prospects, you could have 100% failure rate because you're not talking to anybody who has their hand in the air. When you talk to just 5 or 10 for sale by owners or expireds or probate leads, 100% of them has the potential to list with you. Do you see the difference? And yet agents call all of that in the same bucket as, quote, cold calling.
And again, people that are calling all of it the same thing are, again, people that never actually have done it.
100%.
There are more people that are trying to say, dude, why would you go and do that old school stuff? Why don't you just go run some Facebook ads talking about old school? How about Facebook ads, right? You guys get the point?
I even heard one of our coaching clients said that their old broker, because they had since switched to EXP, but their old broker had said, you only do things like, quote, cold calling until you can afford to buy all of your leads.
Which is
Are you kidding me?
Insane.
I know.
The time you stop proactively generation is never. You never stop proactively generation because proactively generation is the backbone of your business and you don't have to buy the business. It's the most profitable business. So you never stop. There's never a magical time when you can decide to all of a sudden start throwing your profit into the dumpster fire of lead buying and marketing and branding and just set aside proactively generation. The marketing, the branding, and all that stuff does have a place in your business, but it's secondary to the proactive lead generation. That is called passive lead generation. The proactive lead generation is what's going to make you money. The passive lead generation, if done correctly, will reinforce the proactive lead generation. But if you can only afford or have time to do one, which is true for all of you, then I would strongly suggest you become the best proactive lead generator that your market has ever seen.
It works a lot faster too, by the way. Okay, number 6, practice makes permanent. The more you practice prospecting, oops, I slipped, I said prospecting, proactive lead generation, the easier and more natural it becomes. So set a goal for daily prospecting sessions and track your progress to stay accountable. Jeb Blunt, the author of Fanatical Prospecting, puts it this way. The number one reason for failure in sales is an empty pipeline, and the root cause of an empty pipeline is the failure to consistently prospect.
And that is another great book. I was actually trying to think of another book for you guys to read from yesterday's podcast. That would be a great third one, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. We have to get him back on the podcast, by the way.
Yes, we should. He'd be a great interview.
Yep.
Again.
Point number 7, prepare for common objections. And I'll give you guys an interesting fact. Those of you who are, frankly, fanatical prospectors, you'll know what I'm about to say is very true. Sellers never say they all say the same damn thing pretty much at the same time. So you're only going to hear a handful of objections, or sometimes they're not even objections. But what's really kind of funny is when you've done this long enough, you're going to realize it's basically just like a dance. You're going to say something, they're going to say something. You're going to say something, they're going to say something. You're going to ask them a question, they're going to answer the question. The whole thing. And every single conversation you have with, it doesn't matter what type of seller when you're proactively generating, almost always,
it's a pattern.
It's a pattern that results in them saying the same thing. So you're going to know what they're going to say before they say it when you've done this for long enough. And that's actually an amazing thing because you're in complete control of the conversation. Matter of fact, some of you are going to become so good at this, you're almost going to laugh when you hear them say something that's unusual. You're going to be going like, damn, I'd never heard that one before. You're almost going to celebrate it because it's so unusual. It's fun to break the pattern, right? That's where you're actually becoming somebody of, importance in your market because you're now becoming a true professional who's actually doing the real work of real estate, picking up the phone, proactively generating for the sake of being of service to other people, solving their problem, which is getting their home sold.
But you won't see those patterns if you're not making enough calls.
Or if you're allowing yourself to basically get manipulated for all the marketing and branding people trying to sell you away from doing the real work of real estate so you can reach for your credit card and then you can decide to buy a year's worth of marketing and branding on TikTok that you never actually can track any closed transactions from except maybe some first-time buyers. This is all the reality that's that some of you need to wake up to. Point number 7, prepare for common objections.
Anticipating, as Tim said, because it is predictable, it is a pattern. It allows you to prepare for the common objections, and that will reduce your anxiety. When you know how to handle objections confidently, conversations flow more smoothly. Remember, the definition of an objection is simply an unanswered question in the mind of the person you're talking to. It's not an affront, it's not confrontation, it's an unanswered question. So write down the objections you're hearing and work on handling them with your Harris certified coach. Record some of your sessions and listen to your calls. What could you do differently? What works really well for you? You'll only get better with practice. I listen to my coaching clients' calls, their variety of different prospecting, and it is very interesting. I think your example with Jeff, some people sound like a totally different agent sometimes. Sometimes they're really good at the script, but they're not great at closing, and any number of things can be tweaked to get results.
Well, yes, and exactly. And that's really where it's what I was saying the other day. Like, when you and I do kettlebells at home in Dorado, and we're looking in the mirror to make sure that we're not doing the movement wrong. But without a mirror, almost assuredly, we're going to move something wrong and we're going to hurt our backs.
Yes.
And so we have to watch each other and coach each other. But that's the whole point. So if the coach is your mirror, essentially, of telling you exactly what you should be doing right and what you're, maybe needing to improve on. But you'll definitely hear when you're listening to somebody prospect, even if they're, getting good at it, where they screw up at the transitions from question to question, or they're not repeating and affirming, or they're not listening to what the person said, or they're sounding too almost confrontational. So you'll hear a seller say, especially this time of year, ring, ring, hello. Hi, Mr. Seller. This is Tim Harris with eXp Realty. So listen, I was really surprised to see your home came off the market as an expired listing. I was calling, to check in to see if you're ready to get the home sold. There's some iteration of that. There's different versions of the intro on our Premier Coaching that you can use. And the seller this time of year will often say, it's very normal for them to say, yes, but we're going to wait until after the holidays. So if you don't transition from what they just said to the next line in the script, you're going to lose them. Oh, so you're going to wait till after the holidays. That might be the best thing for you. And then you go on to the next question. So what you're going to need to do is repeat what they said, and then you're going to make them feel good about what they said. Even if they say, for example, something that's a little bit, I think, adversarial to you, you need to kind of laugh and repeat what they said. I'm never listing my house with a real estate agent. I can sell it myself. Or some expireds decide to come for sale by owners, which, by the way, those are almost always the easiest to convert to a real listing. I'm just going to try it myself. I know what you agents do. You know what, Mr. Seller, I appreciate you said that. And the fact is if I didn't have a real estate license and I had a house to sell, especially one as nice as yours, I might think about selling it myself as well. But let me ask you a real quick question. You see what I did there?
Yes, you actually agreed with them. You did the opposite of what we sometimes hear them trying to do, which is get into this confrontational mode.
Right. So you got to be visualizing yourself sitting on the same side of the table as the seller, and the opposite side is the market. You're sitting on the same side of the table, opposite side is the market. That's how you actually have to approach it. And when you do it like that, and you're going to change the words, because if you approach these calls from an adversarial or from a game, I see some of these videos on Instagram or all these different things of people, prospecting, and sometimes they're really good, but the manner in which they act and with disrespect towards the seller in which they're speaking, almost like they're taking a scalp when they actually, it's obnoxious and it's disrespectful and it's not professional. This isn't some,
It's
movie.
not Hunger Games. Okay?
No, it's not Hunger Games. Exactly. You're there to help people. You're like a doctor trying to solve a problem.
Which brings us to point number 8. Focus on building relationships, not, quote, selling. What Tim just described, where you're being obnoxious and you're in the sales guy or gal mindset, that's what can wreck a call. So shift your mindset from, quote, selling to building a relationship or being of service. Focus on creating connections, and the real estate conversations will naturally flow. How can you be of service? How can you help somebody buy, sell, or invest? Who else do they know who could use your help? Do you see how we're focusing on being of service, being helpful to them?
Point number 9, set realistic prospecting goals. And I'll break this one down relatively quick, okay? I'll give you guys the top line numbers. So when you start actually doing prospecting, 1 out of 20 contacts is going to result, if you're making the right contacts, hopefully you made that clear in today's show, is going to result in you setting an appointment. That's when you're new. It's going to be bad, honestly. You're going to have to make a shit ton of contacts before you set a pre-qualified listing appointment. But what's going to happen is if you do it consistently and you're having a coach help you make the right, changes, someone on our staff obviously is going to know what to do. you're then going to move from 1 in 20 to something like 1 in 15, and then you're going to go to 1 in 10, and then you're going to go to 1 in 5, 1 in 7. So most of my best prospectors were right in that range. For every, I'd say 5 contacts, they set a pre-qualified listing appointment. Depending, that's a mixture of contacts. That would be an expired. That would be a for sale by owner. That would be, all the other things we teach you guys to do in Premier Coaching. By the way, the link to join Premier Coaching is down below in the show description. You can join Premier Coaching right now for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com or click the link below and you can join Premier Coaching. But that is the realistic goal that you should be shooting for. And again, we show you how to do this, and it all comes down to numbers. And if you never got past 20 contacts to 1 appointment and you just decided it wasn't for you, or you chased some shiny object that promised you wouldn't have to work as hard, well, you're now coming back to the reality that was probably just a lie, and you're realizing you really do have to do the real work of real estate. I'm here to ask you to kindly give yourself a little bit of grace and be more patient with your results. How long will it take depends on how laborious you are to sticking to the scripts and making consistent effort. If you make a goal every single day of making 30 contacts and you do that every single day, for some of you, that's going to be the hardest thing you ever did. Who cares? Do it anyway, right? You're going to be able to do it. It's just picking up the phone and having a conversation with a decision-making adult. It's not like I'm asking you to do something truly hard, like, dig a ditch or something really difficult, right? So you will get there if you start consistently making, say, for example, 30 contacts a day, and then you whittle it down. You'll realize, well, I'm getting better at this. For every 30 contacts, I'm setting 1 listing appointment. And then for every 20, I'm setting 1. For every 10, I'm setting 1. You guys get it? It all is about your skills. You have to have more up to bats to know the proper way to hold the bat, proper way to stand. You have to know essentially when to swing, when the pitcher is throwing the ball so that it's supposed to intentionally make you swing at it, but it's going to be a miss. You guys get it? That only comes from experience. You cannot shortcut that ever with anything in life.
No, that's right. The way you play the game after you've practiced is completely different than the way you play the game when you're learning to hold the bat.
Point number 10, celebrate small wins. And the celebration of small wins is really important, especially when you have a coach, because I have to tell you, as a coach, nothing makes me happier when I see somebody go from 20 contacts for every 1 appointment to 10 contacts for an appointment.
Absolutely.
But people who are in it don't realize that they're improving, and so you have to kind of slow them down and celebrate what they're winning. And then what's really awesome, Julie, I'm sure you'll agree, after someone's been doing it consistently for 6 months or even 90 days, you add up how much money they've made from their freaking proactively generating, and then you have it compared to how much they were making before, and like do a net. Like, so you made $12,000, Bob, and you did that from proactively generation. How much did you net on that, Bob? Oh, $12,000 versus where you're getting your business before with all your marketing and your branding and your lead buying. How much were you making? $4,000. So you, Bob, for how much more effort and time? So the actual effort and time to make the proactive lead generation, Bob, how does that compare to the amount of time you're putting into the social networking and all the other things when you're trial and erroring things, when you're trying to get better at video and all these things? What activity actually is taking more time? And what Bob realizes is, and what you will realize as well, when you get good at proactive lead generation, you have to do it realistically for maybe an hour or 2 a day. That's it. When you're trying to get good at the other thing, because it's so competitive and there's somebody always moving the ball, it's always changing, you're going to have to spend all the time 24/7 trying to figure out the latest hacks, tweets, and all the other things in order to basically try to get any kind of result whatsoever. Does that make sense to you guys? It should.
Yes, so you have to celebrate those small wins. Every conversation, every lead, every connection, every lead follow-up, it's a step forward in your business. Think about it this way. How many of your current clients originated in conversations a month ago, 6 months ago, or longer? That's how you can say thank you, past Bob, for having those conversations, but you won't be able to in the future if you're not doing it today. Your work today is the success you'll have tomorrow, next month, and next year. So implement the strategies we talked about today. You're going to transform your approach to prospecting, proactive lead generation, and confidently handle conversations with people you know and people you don't know. Remember that your fear is temporary, but growth from overcoming it will last your lifetime.
Thank you for listening today. And if you think we merit it, please do give us a 5-star review over on iTunes and a pithy comment as to why you love the podcast. In the meantime, thank you for keeping this the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in the United States. Have a fantastic day.